This week, it's Christmas on Flavours of the West Coast, and I'm absolutely delighted to have with us my co-host, Patricia Kidd, our cultural historian, who's going to lead us through some of the traditions of Christmas in Victoria.
The old Victorians meet the new Victorians.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas.
Christmas, that time of year when we put up displays of festive lights, get together with family and friends, and enjoy some special foods. We're going to be cooking some traditional Christmas treats and exploring the history behind some of our Christmas traditions. When you think of Christmas, what's the first thing that you think of on that Christmas dinner table? It's got to be Christmas pudding. And today I am absolutely delighted to welcome into the studio kitchen Patricia Kidd. So what we're going to do today, and I actually pulled this recipe from a copy of Mrs. Beaton's.
Did you indeed?
So this is a very traditional Christmas pudding recipe. Okay, so we've got sultanas, we've got raisins, we've got currants, okay?
And currants were absolutely key. Currants went into so many dishes from the Middle Ages onwards.
Okay, so we've got our three dried fruits in there. We've got our lemon peel and citron peel. Into that we're going to put a little bit of desiccated coconut, and then we've got our slivered almonds.
Right.
Okay. And then into all that, we've got some brandy.
Of course.
And then we've got a little drop of milk. And then into that, we're going to put 1 egg. Now, in an ideal world, this would sit overnight.
Yeah.
Just to macerate and to allow all those fluids to start to plump up the fruits. But for today's exercise, we're going to imagine it sat overnight. Now, Patricia, I'm going to put you to work if you have no objections here. What I would like you to do is grate me some lemon and some orange zest.
I can do that.
And we're going to go with the big, wonderful microplane. You can just do it straight. There we go.
Both
Be careful.
in the same bowl?
Into the same bowl is fine. Yeah, they can go into. And while you're doing that, I'm going to put all of our dry ingredients together. Now, in here, I've got all of our spices. Okay, so I've got ginger, I've got cinnamon, and I've got nutmeg. And that's got a little bit of flour and a pinch of salt. Some fresh breadcrumbs, so soft breadcrumbs. And then we've got our suet.
Yep.
Okay? And if you don't have suet, butter will work as well. It's the fat component, so you can use a number of different alternatives, but that suet, which of course is a pork or a beef render. So we've got the zest of the fruit. We're now going to use the juicer here and get all that beautiful lemon and orange into our dried fruit as well. So this is once again just rehydrating some of that fruit, giving it a little bit more. Okay, so in goes the lemon and the orange zest, and we're just going to bring all that together.
Are there breadcrumbs in there as well?
That's right, there's breadcrumbs in there.
There was always leftover bread. I mean, bread was such a staple, and pudding used breadcrumbs, so you didn't waste any.
So what we've got now, we've got all our dry ingredients with all our spices, with our suet mixed through there, and then our soaked fruits and citrus and almonds and coconut in there. And then we just bring the two together. Now this mix should be quite dry because we're going to make this in the traditional manner in the pudding case or in the pudding cloth without a bowl. If you find, viewers, that it's a little bit wet, don't hesitate to add a few more breadcrumbs or even a little bit more flour just to make sure it's dry enough. Otherwise it could possibly come through your pudding cloth. Okay, so we're going to put that to one side here while we get our pudding cloth ready. Now what I've got here is multiple layers of cheesecloth, at least 4. In fact, I think this one's 6 layers the way I've folded it over. And I've just used a bowl or a soup plate. A plate will work as well. It just helps to hold everything in place. And what we want to do, nice soft butter, and we want to put a nice, basically the width of the plate with butter, and don't miss any. We don't want to see any little gaps.
No,
so
I know.
Start at the bottom.
Stick.
That's perfect, yeah. And then we'll dust it with flour. So this is just like when you're making a cake. When you butter the pan and dust it with flour, same principle. And I'm going to venture a guess, but you've done this yourself before, haven't you?
I have to admit, I make puddings every year, I make mincemeat every year, but I have never used a pudding cloth. I use a pudding basin.
I hope you leave here today with the confidence to be able to use the pudding cloth. So you've got that's beautiful, a nice, generous, even layer of flour on there. Now we've got our pudding, and as you can see, it's quite dry. And what I'm going to do is just start the shaping process in the bowl. That's why I used a nice large bowl. And if I use I'm going to venture a guess that the Victorians probably didn't have these beautiful Rubbermaid spatulas.
But they did have...
They had their hands, but this works.
I've been waiting for you to get your hands dirty on that. I just want to put my hands in there and grab it.
Well, as you can see, I can, absolutely. So what we're going to do is just shape that beautifully, and then that can go into our pudding cloth.
A little cannonball, that's what it should look like.
That's perfect, that's exactly.
That is absolutely
And you can see how the texture is just so that it holds almost
yeah.
by itself. And then all you're going to do is very carefully bring the edges up, trying to keep the flour in place. So right to the top, and then I like to do the four corners first. And that way you see how I'm making sure the flour goes up and around. And
Tuck it in.
Yeah, and then what we're going to
tightly.
do, and then give it a squeeze and a little bit of a turn. And if you can tie that as close to the pudding itself as possible, we'll push that right down. That's it. Beautiful. Lovely, lovely Christmas pudding.
Voila.
Excellent. And then what I've got on is my pot of boiling water. And very simply, a wooden spoon or something across the top that will hold it. And then all I'm going to do is put a knot a couple of inches up off the pudding, just like so.
It's actually a lot easier to do this than using a pudding basin.
Absolutely. I was quite surprised when I did it the first time that and then you simply put that through and drop it in.
And how long are you going to boil that for?
I'm going to give that about 4 hours.
Okay.
4 hours later, here
And
we
we're
have,
anxiously awaiting the
and
delivery.
here is our delicious, and the whole room just smells of all those Christmas spices and dried fruit and everything else, isn't it? So I'm just going to pull that under there, and that way we can bring this over. And of course, this is the moment of truth, isn't it? I put a number of knots on this.
Did you? Oh, you are good.
So then we can just unwrap everything. There we go. And you can see that little bit of flour on the outside has created that paste. Now, if you want to do the bowl upside down on there, that's beautiful. And then we'll go 1, 2, 3. Look at that.
Et voila.
There we go.
It needs some light.
So
Are we going to flame
We're
the
going to flame
pudding?
the tradition of flaming the pudding. I mean, what's the relevance and the reason for doing that?
Light is a critical part of this time of the year. So many of the things that we do at Christmas go way past Christianity. I mean, Christianity basically comes in the middle and adopts a lot of the traditions that had formed sometimes in the mists of time. So light was crucial because this is the period at which the days very, very slowly begin to lengthen again.
And we're only 4 days past the solstice, aren't we? So it's the shortest time of the year.
Traditionally, the 25th of December was celebrated as the solstice.
Oh. Let's make some light, shall we? So I'm going to just give my brandy a little bit of a... Now I'm warming it just so that it flames nicely. If you pour on cold, it really doesn't work well all the time. So we're going to drop that down. And I've got my handy Victorian lighter.
I have also learned not to overdo it on the brandy because you don't want a conflagration.
And there we go. So Patricia, we have our beautiful traditional Victorian Christmas pudding. Now we're in a fairly modern kitchen here, but I think the way to enjoy this would really be in a much more traditional setting.
Oh, goodness me. How about a castle? Would that be...
I think a castle would be the most excellent destination.
Off we go then.
Excellent. Luckily for us, Victoria is home to Craigdarroch Castle, built by Robert Dunsmuir, a Scottish immigrant who made a fortune from coal. The castle was completed in 1890, and the Dunsmuir family lived here until 1908. Today, the castle is a National Historic Site. Its beautifully preserved interior giving visitors a fascinating glimpse into the life of a wealthy family in Victorian times. With its richly finished rooms garnished with period decorations, it's the perfect venue to taste our traditional Christmas pudding with Executive Director John Hughes. So, John, what is this room that we're in? This is a wonderful space.
Yeah, so it's the breakfast room, we call it. Breakfast and lunch typically would have been served here. If you were a formally invited guest to the castle for something, you would have been in the formal dining room. Certainly the daughters and their friends would have been in this room regularly.
The pudding is delicious. It's exactly the right consistency.
It's light. I'm quite delighted with that. What would Christmas have been like here in the time of the Dunsmuirs?
To be honest, we don't really know. There's not a lot of history for the family in this place as far as Christmas goes. We do know that Maud's daughters visited Joan here at Christmas time. We know that Maud painted a Christmas card that she gave to her fiancé one Christmas, and there are some toys outside of the main tree in the drawing room that we believe were given as a gift here at Christmas time.
Okay.
Certainly, you know, throughout the year they had events, and they made the social pages, and you know, they were talked about regularly. So I would be surprised that there wasn't some sort of entertainment or formal event that happened here at Christmas. The drawing room was set up with a piano, and I mean, it was very, very common after dinner to entertain and to gather around the piano and sing, and a Christmas tree in there, and the kids' toys and things. Another great place for the family to do that sort of thing. Yeah. And we know that the daughters were very, very musical.
Christmas dinner was still a big event, a big family event?
Oh, yeah, it was very much a big family event, but the idea of the turkey that we think of today, although it was introduced in the Victorian era, turkey was financially out of reach of a lot of the population. They would have been in sort of the northern part of England, perhaps doing the roast beef. In the southern part, they tended to go towards the goose and that sort of thing. And the poor rabbit was very common.
Right.
So your Christmas dinner, you would have had your party and your guests and all of that sort of thing, but it would have been a rabbit on the table.
Right.
What hail, Steve?
Drink hail, Patricia.
And although it sounds perhaps slightly rude, it was in fact me wishing you very good health.
Very
and
good
you're
health.
wishing me the same.
Thank you very much.
Anglo-Saxon.
Outstanding, outstanding. So now, wassail means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, doesn't it? I mean, I've heard of it as a blessing to the orchards for the
Yes.
crops and the next growth.
Yeah.
In this case, what are we talking about? We're talking about something similar or different?
We can certainly do that. That was associated mainly in the West Country with the blessing of the trees to ensure fertility in the coming year.
Right.
But you also get, in the 18th century, perhaps as early as the 17th century, the wassail wenches, which sounds like rather
Sounds
like
like jolly
medieval
good fun.
babes, exactly. But the wassail wenches had a bowl of wassail, which is what we're going to mix up now, and they would go from house to house. And the idea was that they would begin with a Christmas carol. They'd sing one or two choruses of the Christmas carol, and then the doors would open, and they would be invited in.
Right.
Everybody would share of the wassail bowl, and then they would refill it there, and then they would go on to the next house.
Okay. So let's get this one going. This is a recipe that you brought for us. This is a modern twist on lamb's wool, I believe this was called, wasn't
that's
it? So what we're going to do, I'm going to give you the brown sugar.
Okay.
And I'm going to put a little bit of heat under that one. So that can go in there. And we just want enough ale. And in this case, we've got some beautiful Spinnaker's nut brown
my
ale.
very favorite.
And we just want a little splash in there. And basically, we just want to dissolve the sugar.
Okay.
So once the sugar has dissolved, then we can put the rest of that in. While you're doing that, I've got some toast, which is going to go in the bottom of our bowl, which seems a little bit of an odd thing.
Well,
what's that all about?
Now, I think the ale during this period tended to have a lot of stuff in it. So I think the toast actually helped to absorb or
almost a
attract
filter.
some of the, exactly. Now, Steve, the brown sugar is dissolved.
It's
Can I pour
completely
the rest
melted.
of
You
the-
can go in with the rest of the beer.
Okay.
While you're doing that, I'm going to grate a nutmeg. Okay.
And it scents the kitchen so beautifully as
and
well.
this one is, you could just smell it now. It
Yeah.
smells beautiful. I've got a little bit of ground ginger, so I'm going to give that to you. Now, the other part of this recipe are apples, because you can also make it with apple cider. But in this case, what we've got is some apples, which I've roasted in the oven. I cored them out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this beautiful apple flesh, which is all roasted. I just use a spoon and just mash that.
How long did you roast the apples?
They were about half an hour, 40 minutes.
That's
So
all.
in a nice hot oven, about 425 degrees. Because what I want you to do now is you're going to give this a good old, I'm going to give this a good old whip. And
A good rollicking.
That's
Am I
right.
going
Be
to give it a
careful
good
initially because
rollicking?
that apple will probably float around to start with. Once it's kind of distributed throughout, there we go. You've done this once or twice before.
I never have, but I love
And of
these
course,
leaders.
apples have got pectin, which is where our pectin comes from making jams and jellies.
Look at it.
And that is actually going to help act as a thickener, as well as you mentioned before, the spices.
Right.
It will help bind the spices. and give you that beautiful. So it's this beautiful, fruity, spicy, Christmassy smell coming out of there. It's just delicious.
Oh, yeah. Oh. This will warm the cockles of your heart, my dear.
It most certainly will. It most certainly will. Before we pour this into our wassail bowl, you should have the honor of tasting and making sure it's of satisfactory quality.
I will sacrifice myself. I will throw myself under that train.
There we go, my dear.
Wassail.
Patricia, drink hail.
Oh, it's lovely because it's ale, but you've got the flavour of the apple and then the spices on top of it.
And the sugar kind of just gives it all
yes,
that
but
nice
it's not terribly.
sweetness.
Yeah, but it's not terribly sweet. So yes,
Wonderful.
that would really clear the vocal cords.
Wassail in hand, we set out to test those vocal cords with some help from the Wassail Wenches. Our first stop is the orchard at Government House.
Joy come to you, and to you your wassail too, and we bless you and send you a happy new year, and God send you a happy new year.
So, Patricia, what are we doing out here in the orchard with a bowl of this delicious wassail?
We're going to get merry.
We're going to get merry.
Furthermore, we're going to take the tree with us. So we're calling this the apple tree man, and
Right.
this is the king apple tree, as it were. I'm assuming it's an apple tree. I should know because I wander through here. But what we're going to do is we're going to bless the roots of the apple
Right.
tree, and what that's going to do, or what it's traditionally supposed to do, is to ensure great fertility in the next year. So I will dip the ladle in.
I hope the tree appreciates this. 'Cause
Yes,
it
so
actually
do
is
I.
delicious.
So do I. This is normally done, by the way, at 12th night. And the other thing that we should actually be doing is screaming and shouting and banging pots, because the other part of this is actually scaring away the evil spirits that are going to keep the tree from bearing properly.
Right.
Now, because we're looking after the bottom of the tree, we've got to look after the friends of the tree as well.
Okay.
So we've got a piece of bread
Yeah.
that we are going to leave, and I'll bet the deer get it first.
Yeah, yeah.
But the idea is that the birds and the robins will also feast, because we're responsible for their welfare as well.
And that's it. Now we have a healthy, blessed apple tree.
And I will be scrumping the apples. Shh. In the summer.
Of course, the other tradition is to call at your neighbor's house to share a wassail cup.
And God bless you and send you a
Happy New Year.
and God send you a happy new year. Wow. Welcome.
Season's greetings, Your Honor.
Walks hell, Your Honour. So we are here wassailing. We have blessed your orchard, and now we are going to bless the household through you with a glass of wassail.
And it's steaming hot.
Isn't it? Doesn't it smell wonderful? It's basically a spiced and sweetened ale. So your very good health. Wassail.
Wassail.
Oh, you know it's good when you know it's good when it steams your glass yourself.
Lovely, very lovely.
The Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies is the ultimate Christmas ballet. Patricia, what are sugar plums?
I was hoping you'd ask that. Hold out your hands and close your eyes. There you are, a handful of sugar plums.
Oh, look at these.
Hey, you know what they are?
I know these are sugared almonds.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's basically what a sugar plum was hundreds of years ago. It was sort of a portmanteau term for anything. So it could be a sugar-covered almond, a sugar-covered raisin, a sugar-covered caraway seeds or something like that. That's the old form. But by the 19th century, they'd become the sort of soft round balls that we're going to make
Okay.
today.
What we're going to do is, I can ask you once again if you can do me a lemon. I need about half of a lemon zest.
Now, do you want fine or grape?
I'll have to find for this one, and I'm going to pulse my walnuts. Okay. And again, ground nuts were very, very popular at this period, weren't they? For
yeah.
for binding and for. So I'm
Yeah.
going to make a little noise. Okay, so I've got the walnuts down to a fairly fine crumb. They're going to get finer as we mix them in. I've got some dried prunes. So of course we've got dates, beautiful sweetness from those dates. So we'll do that. And you notice I'm working my way down from the size wise because I've got my raisins and my cherries.
Right, you are. So the bigger ones first.
The bigger ones first. We'll let them break down. And then we've got some beautiful crystallized ginger because of course ginger is one of those things that just makes
Perks it up.
everything.
Yeah.
And we're going to bring all that together. And that's looking. And then of course spice. Now in here we've got ginger, cinnamon, anise, and nutmeg,
Yay.
and allspice.
Right.
Okay, so again, all those, and I call them the Christmas spices. They're all those nice warm Christmas spices.
Cinnamon and nutmeg especially turn up in so many recipes from the 18th century onwards.
And that's pretty much it, just the lemon zest to go in there. And this is going to bring that little bit of freshness in there, that little bit of acidity, and just to give it that nice light
no
lemony
fluid at
flavor.
all?
No fluid at all.
Okay.
No fluid at all, because again, now if you find they're dry, you can add a little bit of honey just to help bind it.
Right.
But I think this is going to be fine because we've got the fruits aren't so dry. They've still got some moisture to
Well,
them.
and the beauty of it is that they'll keep for a long time as well, won't
Absolutely, absolutely. So what we'll do is we're going to lift that off of there. We're going to just drop this here out of the way.
Oh, I think I'm going to be able to play with my favorite food again.
Oh,
aren't I?
absolutely, absolutely. And then what we've got over here is just a tray of granulated sugar. Now these are quite rich, so they don't want to be too large. Sort of
We could have
about the size of a cherry, kind of. You know, a little
really?
bit.
Is that-
That's perfect. Yeah, like a nice big. And then we're just going to drop them into the sugar. That's really it. And
Oh, it
that's
clings together beautifully.
It's a
it's so
beautiful
easy
texture,
to do.
isn't it? Oh, isn't that wonderful? And then all we do with this is we just give it a little bit of our Christmas shimmy.
Now, if
there
I'm
we
not
go.
mistaken, the recipe says that if you're not going to serve these right away, don't sugar them.
Don't sugar them because, of course, the little bit of moisture that is in there, sugar's hygroscopic, which means it absorbs
Yeah.
moisture. So what'll happen if you leave these for any length of time, that sugar will start to weep and go soft. I don't think these are going to last very long, quite frankly.
It's all either.
For more great recipes, ask for the Flavors of the West Coast cookbook in your local bookstore.